to be humble, to be kind. It is a giving of peace in your mind, to a stranger, to a friend, to give in such a way that has no end. We are love, we are one, we are how we treat each other when the day is done. We are peace, we are war, we are how we treat each other and nothing more. And to be bold, to be brave, it is a thinking that the heart can still be saved, and the darkness can come quick. The danger's in the anger and in the hanging on to it. We are love, we are one, we are how we treat each other when the day is done. We are peace, we are war, we are how we treat each other, nothing more. And tell me what it is that you see, a world that's full of endless possibilities.
Good evening and welcome from Holy Innocents Anglican Church in Paradise. So glad you could join us live this evening or whenever you're going to watch us. Welcome to Faith Works. At the end of almost all of our worship services, especially our services of Holy Communion, the Eucharist, the Mass, a person at the back, many times our deacon, will say a very short sentence, and arguably the most important sentence of our worship service. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. All that we learn, all that we experience, all that we know during that brief time together each and every week during worship, we bring into the world to serve one another, to encourage one another, to change our faith into good works. Our church throughout the ages have been called into the world to serve. We realize also, as being a part of this community, there are many other people and organizations in community who also serve. And so we hope during our program of Faith Works to connect with many other groups and individuals and organizations who serve in community, that we may hear from one another of our work and service and our encouragement to one another in community, and also how we may be able to help, to encourage and support one another in work. This evening I will pass you over to Tracy, our host, once again, who will introduce our guest this evening. During our event this evening, I will be monitoring our chat room at Facebook. If you'd like to make a comment or ask a question before our event is finished this evening, we'll have an opportunity to make that comment or question to our guest. Now I'll pass you over to Tracy and our guest for this evening.
Thank you, Reverend Byron. It's my pleasure this evening to welcome 4 lovely people. We thought we were going to have 2, but we're doubly blessed. We have 4 from Turnings in St. John's. And in the interest of full disclosure here, these people work together every day, so social distancing and mask wearing they're in the same bubble. It's not an issue. Just want to throw that out there. So to my right, we have Mr. Dan McGettigan, and Dan is the founder and director of Turnings. Next to him, we have Mr. Kevin Foley, who is the program coordinator for Turnings. And then we have Miss Amelia Reimer, and Amelia is a volunteer with Turnings. And last but certainly not least, we have Dale Corrine, Reverend Dale Corrine, who is also a volunteer with Turnings and has been now for quite some time. So we'll get started. I'm going to throw this open, whoever wants to answer it. So, we won't do a class format where you raise your hand or anything, but whoever wants to answer, you can just grab your mic and answer. So how did Turnings get started, and when did they get started?
Hello and good evening. And we'd like to say we're very grateful to be invited to Holy Innocents to talk about our outreach, our organization. Turning started in 1993. It was originally called a Metro Community Chaplaincy. And as one might know, there is a chaplaincy in the institutions, in the jails, and in the prisons all over the world. And in Canada, in the federal system, there's chaplaincy, and of course in the provincial system. So there was a very visionary type of person, Reverend Pierre Allard, who was chaplain in Archambault and Dorchester, and he saw a need in the community for chaplaincy for offenders who were coming out of jail and who were falling through the cracks. So that's how it started. I was fortunate enough to be around in Ottawa when he was speaking about it, and we started it here, and it's been on the go ever since, and we used a lot of volunteers.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dan. So tell us a little bit about turnings. Who are your clients mainly? And how many do you see per week?
Okay, thanks, Tracy. I coordinate what we call COSA, or Circles of Support and Accountability. And that was, I'll give you a little background on that if you don't mind.
Sure.
And still try and include the numbers as well. But that was something that was it began sort of accidentally in Hamilton, Ontario, in the early to mid '90s, and there was a chap in that particular case who had been charged, tried, convicted, and served time for a sex crime. And of course, as you might be aware, that people who commit sex crimes very often are not welcome back into the community anywhere. But and for the most part, and if they're not welcome anywhere, there's probably a setup to maybe reoffend. So this particular chap, Harry Nye, really, he was a Mennonite minister who had worked inside the prisons with this particular one chap who was getting out, and people were demonstrating against him and so on. But they, so the best thing that they could do was put a little group around this particular person to sort of make him accountable, but yet support him as he got reestablished in the community. And it was sort of accidental that they found that this thing worked. And about 6 months after that, somebody else was coming out of prison, and they did a similar thing. And it basically worked out to be called Circles of Support and Accountability, where you support somebody but you hold them accountable, and so on. And the initial chap, when he got out of prison, he had not committed any other crime for 15 years. He died 15 years afterwards. But anyway, this thing started to spread across Canada and throughout the U.S., across Europe. We know into Australia, New Zealand, and so on. But our Dan brought it to Newfoundland and Labrador around '94, if I'm correct, Dan. And so we've been holding these. Many people don't know about them, but we've been doing these things for several years now, and that's where I guess I come in. I coordinate these things, and so we've had several of these what we call circles over the course of a year. And to successfully establish these things, we have volunteers who come in out of the community. And I guess this is a kind of not an appeal, but I guess an attempt to just to suggest to people that if they were interested to get involved as volunteers with these things. Not for everybody, we know that, but we also know that we have volunteers for years who keep coming back. And our address, we're on in St. John's. We're on Mary Meeting Road in the third floor of the hub, 21 Mary Meeting Road. So basically the circles are such that they one individual meets with 3 or 4 volunteers at the same time once a week for an hour. We keep notes and so on. We train our volunteers to to deal with this and so on. So, but and then there's the other side where we work within the prisons, especially Her Majesty's Penitentiary. I know that we also work with all the other institutions across the province at various times, and so a lot of these people will come to visit us as well once they get out of prison, and we deal directly with them in prison as well. So, and I want Dan to speak to that part of it, because the numbers are really, it's too difficult to keep track of an actual set numbers.
Yeah.
But I hope that, and if people have questions, they can call us too, I could say, at
Sure.
Turnings, at our office on Mary Meeting Road. But if Dan could comment on the work that he does within it, because we do individual one-on-one sessions, etc., at HMP as well.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin.
We go to HMP, Her Majesty's Penitentiary, at least 3 days a week, sometimes 4. Kevin had been teaching a program there called ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics. And Dave has been there with me, and also Ms. Reimer, Amelia, and also Tracy. Tracy was is a student at Queen's College and worked for a little while with us as a student placement. So at HMP, the count is low now, but it could range from 180 at any given time to 140 offenders who are in for various crimes. And the building is old, and these people are coming out to the community. So our role is one-on-one counsel, working with chaplains. Kevin works with the guys as well, one-on-one, but also in a group, in each class. And we collaborate with addictions counselors and John Howard Society, whoever goes in there. Because we're all going in one direction, and that is, number one is public safety. And as Kevin mentioned, it's accountability. We ask and try to get the inmates to realize that they do have a life other than the one that they had before. They have families, they have children in many cases, they have mental health and addictions issues, and they're coming back into the community. So the stigma of being an offender is one thing. The other one is the stigma of being whether either a violent offender, a property offender, or a sex offender. So we're not there to be soft on criminals, we're there to challenge them to change and to integrate back into the community. At our office, we could have anywhere from 30 to 40 come into our office, and we have circles of support and accountability, as Kevin referenced, and we utilize volunteers who are trained. And ultimately, the volunteers tell us that they wish they had known about this kind of work before, because it's the first time that they can establish some kind of a relationship with someone who's trying to integrate back into the community. So we also, at times, when parole, the Corrections Service of Canada wants us to go, we go on in-reach to the Atlantic institutions, federal institutions, to talk to Newfoundland offenders and inmates who are coming back and challenge them to try to do the best they can to integrate back into the community with the supports that we try to provide.
Thank you, Dan and Kevin. Very well said. Thank you. This question wasn't on our list, but since we have 2 volunteers here from Turnings, Amelia and Dale, how did you guys get started with Turnings, and what's been your biggest joy, I guess, about being at Turnings and doing work in restorative justice?
Thank you. Actually, it was Dale who got me introduced to Turnings, and I've been with the organization almost a year now, and it's been really, really interesting, and it's been an education as well. I really appreciate the community partnerships that have been happening as well with the new Elizabeth Fry Society of Newfoundland Labrador, and also trying to reach out to Clarenville and Nova institutions to get women Newfoundland Labrador offenders services while they're incarcerated. No, it's been really good, and finding out how many places are doing, especially Turnings and Elizabeth Fry are doing a lot of the same work between men and women and non-binary people, and it's really promising to see harm reduction and restorative justice models put into play.
Excellent, thank you. And Dale, what about you?
Well, like you, I guess I've done my CPE, my clinical pastoral education component at Turnings 3 years ago. When I had mixed feelings going into, once I met Dan and Kevin, they explained to me what Turnings was. I had mixed feelings at first about the circles of support and accountability, something completely out of my norm. Because I came at it from a point that was heading towards ordination in the church. I was coming at a point from my father that has a family. So it was. I looked at it two different ways. But from talking to Dan and Kevin and actually sitting and spending the time in the circles with these people and realizing that victims and there's victims and there's victims and victims, and it's just this mad cycle that people are caught into. And the one thing that has grabbed me about Turnings is that their mandate, not their mandate, I guess, but they want no more victims. And those of us in community that want to live in community, we're all a part of it, the greater community. Well, these people are going to be there as well, right? So it's better to be involved in these people's lives, to keep them accountable to their actions and to where they are. And it just makes me feel safer, to be quite honest, right? That's the biggest joy I can get out of it. It creates a sense of safety.
Excellent. Thank you both. So what, in terms of volunteers, how many volunteers do you have right now? Roughly.
Yes, I can say we have about 18 volunteers right now. And again, depending, we know that we have people from probably 20 years of age to 70 years of age as volunteers. And and for various reasons, some people, we find, for example, September is a time when people are going back to school, or they're probably getting new jobs, or they're moving to a new city or a new province, or something of that nature that, in other words, a turnover. So the numbers change, but we try to recruit as often as we can and train. And again, and I think something along the lines of what Dale was saying, is that for the most part, from our perspective here, is to try and break the cycle. So a lot of times these things have been going on in families for years, and we try to break the cycle so that it doesn't go into the next generation and so on. And again, as Dale said, no more victims. That's our basic mandate, a better community.
Thank you, Kevin. And can you give us an idea of the walks of life that some of your volunteers come from?
Yes, certainly. We have retired people, and we have. I do know that in some cases we have people who've had difficulty in their own family, or where somebody, they feel that they have to give back to the community. We have younger people who very often have ambitions to pursue a career in the helping fields. Sometimes police officers, social work students, and whatever. But for the most part, and everybody's, again, I think people usually feel after a short while whether it's for them or not, and they become very, very solid members. And again, just to let anybody who might be watching or listening or whatever, that it's been shown over and over again that these circles work.
And I guess in terms of a faith community or a community as a whole, what can we do to support Turnings?
Well, we could use prayer for sure, because a lot of the offenders that we deal with are looking for the spiritual aspect, whether they say it up front or not, but this is what we see. And to answer that question, we need volunteers who can be trained and who are committed, because we do have victim representatives at times and actual victims in our volunteers. And as Kevin mentioned, the younger people usually are students, like yourselves, and criminology students, social work students, and ordinary citizens. When I was trained in circles of support in Ontario, when I first started, to make a very long story short, I went to a circle in Peterborough with Hugh Kierkegaard, and there was a picket line around the house because this sex offender was extremely dangerous. But he was out in the community, and he was in the group. So he was trying to make efforts to integrate, but the stigma was there, and he was very dangerous. But anyway, there was a senior lady there, and the core member, the offender, said, "I'd like to be friends with you." And she said, "I don't want to be your friend. I'm here because I want to protect my grandchild." So that's how it started. But it ended up that the relationship grew a bit, and that particular offender didn't reoffend again. And the evaluation has been done on COSA around America and Canada and the UK and US, and a 75% recidivism rate. So it works. Presently, we have one offender in the circle for the last 17 years. He hasn't reoffended, thank God. So it's not, these people come out into the community. It's difficult to get housing and to get into programs. They've done programs, hopefully, in the side, but it ends. So the only thing that really can support them and protect, to a degree, society is circles of support and accountability. So we hope, to answer your question again, we need a lot of prayer, because we want to continue this work. We want to pass it over to younger people, and it's our effort at public safety.
Thank you, guys. We'll check in with Reverend Byron now to see if there are any comments or questions.
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Well, guys, I'd just like to say a big thank you again for coming in tonight. We really appreciate your time and all your information about turnings and restorative justice. And if anybody out there is watching and feels a call to this ministry and this type of service, please give these guys a call. And as Kevin and Dan said, they're located at 21 Mary Meeting Road in the Hub building. You can even drop by and see them, I guess. That would be an open invitation. So on behalf of all of us, have a great night. God bless, and remember to be kind to each other. Take care.